Today, we stand at the threshold of one of the most enigmatic, venerated, and frankly feared texts in the Western esoteric tradition, the Book of Abramelin the Mage. Let us be frank from the outset. This is not a text for the curious, nor for the thrill-seeker. It is not for those who leaf through grimoires in search of a parlor trick, nor for those who yearn for power without price. The Book of Abramelin is, above all, a crucible, a spiritual ordeal wherein one is either transformed or undone. To understand its dangers, we must first understand its context. The Book of Abramelin appears in the 15th century, attributed to an otherwise obscure figure, Abraham of Würzburg, a Jewish traveler and mystic. The narrative is a letter from Abraham to his son Lamech, recounting the story of his quest for hidden knowledge, culminating in his initiation by the mysterious Egyptian mage, Abramelin. Unlike the more familiar grimoires of the age, such as the Gutier or the Key of Solomon, the Book of Abramelin is not primarily concerned with the summoning and commanding of spirits through ritual and arcane sigils. It is not a manual of sorcery, but a blueprint for spiritual transformation. The heart of the work is the so-called operation, a long, arduous process intended to bring the magician into direct communion with their holy guardian angel, what one might call the higher self, the divine spark, or, in the language of classical philosophy, the daimon. This process, the book claims, will, if successfully completed, grant the magician not only knowledge of their own true will, but also the power to subdue and command the most formidable spirits in the infernal hierarchy: Lucifer, Leviathan, Satan, Belial, and their legions. But let us be clear, the Book of Abramelin is not a toolkit for conjurers. It is a sacred ordeal disguised as a magical operation. Herein lies the first and perhaps greatest danger. The grimoire is explicit. Not all are called to this work. The operation is predicated on a genuine divine summons, a vocation that comes not from the ego, but from the deepest recesses of the soul. To approach it out of pride, curiosity, or avarice is, according to the text, to court disaster. Unlike much of modern occultism, which often encourages experimentation and syncretism, the Book of Abramelin is uncompromising. It is, in essence, a religious rite, suffused with the language, morality, and cosmology of late medieval Judaism and Christianity. Its worldview is binary. One is either aligned with the divine, or one is lost. This exclusivity is not simply a matter of dogma. The book insists that the operation cannot be undertaken lightly. It must not be approached as a means to mere power or as a shortcut to mystical insight. To mistake it for a spellbook is to risk not only failure, but personal ruin. The practical demands of the operation are forbidding. The aspirant must devote themselves to a period of rigorous purification, traditionally 6 lunar months, though some versions extend this to 18. During this time, one is expected to live in near total seclusion, maintaining strict moral and bodily discipline. Daily prayers at sunrise and sunset, abstention from alcohol, sexual activity, falsehood, idle company, and all forms of vanity. The magician must build a separate oratory, don consecrated garments, and maintain a life of near monastic purity. In effect, the operation is a spiritual siege designed to dismantle the ego, to expose every impurity, neurosis, and shadow lurking within the psyche. Modern practitioners who have attempted even partial versions of the operation describe a process that is both harrowing and transformative. Extended solitude, intense introspection, and the collapse of ordinary social routines can lead to disintegration of the familiar sense of self. Nightmares, intrusive visions, and psychological crises are common. The operation begins, quite literally, with a mirror, forcing the practitioner to confront their own inner demons before they ever encounter the infernal hierarchy. In this respect, the Book of Abramelin prefigures modern psychological insight, the recognition that the greatest adversaries are internal, that spiritual practice can bring suppressed material to the surface, and that such confrontations can be overwhelming, even destructive, if undertaken without preparation or support. The culmination of the operation is not, as one might expect, immediate communion with the divine. Rather, it is a confrontation with the four kings of hell: Lucifer, Leviathan, Satan, and Belial. These entities are not presented as mere bogeymen, but as personifications of the practitioner's own deepest vices and temptations: ambition, pride, lust, defiance. The magician is required to bind and subdue them, not through brute force, but through the authority granted by union with the holy guardian angel. This is a profound psychological allegory. The practitioner, having confronted their own shadow, must now master it. The book warns in the strongest possible terms that to attempt this confrontation without the protection and guidance of the angel is to invite deception, spiritual attack, even madness. The demons may appear to comply, but will ultimately undermine, seduce, and corrupt the unwary aspirant. Historical accounts abound of magicians who, having tampered with the infernal, suffered paranoia, delusion, and ruin. Aleister Crowley's abortive attempt at Boleskine House in 1900 is perhaps the most famous modern instance. Crowley himself wrote that the incomplete operation unleashed forces he could not master, and may have contributed to the house's later reputation for hauntings and tragedy. We must here confront the darkest possibility. What happens if the operation is attempted and fails? The consequences, according to both the text and practitioners' testimonies, are not merely symbolic. One may experience true psychological collapse, hallucinations, paranoia, obsessive-compulsive behavior, and even prolonged psychosis. The summoning of entities that cannot be banished may lead to what traditional shamans describe as soul loss, the fragmentation of the psyche under spiritual duress. Worse, one may fall prey to the most insidious failure of all, the illusion of success. The magician may become convinced that they have achieved union with the angel, that they are divinely inspired, when in truth they have been seduced by the shadow. In such cases, the practitioner becomes a mouthpiece for the very forces they sought to master. History is littered with the wreckage of such individuals, self-proclaimed prophets, would-be magi whose spiritual pride led to delusion, manipulation, or madness. Let us assume, for the sake of argument, that the operation is completed successfully. The magician achieves union with the angel. The spirits are subdued. The magical squares, allegedly capable of uncovering treasure, conjuring visions, traversing the air, and speaking with the dead, are granted. Here, however, lies a final, subtle danger: the allure of power. The text is clear. The moment these gifts are used for pride, for personal gain, for vengeance or domination, the sacred bond is broken. The magician becomes not a vessel for the divine, but a tyrant, enthralled to the very forces they have invoked. Unlike other magical systems, the Book of Abramelin admits no middle ground. One either becomes a living conduit for the angel or is corrupted by the shadow. The operation offers no quarter for the morally ambiguous, the half-committed, or the merely curious. It is a spiritual razor's edge, all or nothing. The magical squares, gates you may regret opening. A particular feature of the Book of Abramelin is its catalogue of hundreds of magical squares, cryptic matrices of letters, each associated with specific spirits and powers. It is tempting, in the age of the internet, to view these as puzzles or curiosities. Some modern occultists have treated them as objects for casual experimentation, or as sources for magical hacks. This is, I must stress, a grave error. The tradition warns that even to gaze upon these squares without proper preparation is to invite attention from the entities they encode. To use them without the protection of the holy guardian angel is to go into battle with armor made of wax. The forces invoked may respond, but not as expected. Some may attach themselves to the practitioner, often with lasting consequences. Anecdotal reports abound of obsessive thoughts, disturbances in sleep and mood, and persistent feelings of being watched or accompanied after even brief engagement with the squares. Spirits once roused are not easily dismissed. Some linger, some feed, and some whisper. Perhaps the most profound danger of the Book of Abramelin is not the threat of external demons, but the merciless exposure of internal ones. The operation is, at its core, a confrontation with the ego, the seat of ambition, guilt, self-deception, and rebellion. It is not Lucifer who tempts, it is one's own ambition. Not Satan who accuses, it is one's own guilt. Not Belial who rebels, it is one's own refusal to surrender to higher truth. The book is feared, ultimately, because it does not flatter. It does not offer power without price. It strips away illusions, leaving only the harsh light of self-knowledge. In this, it stands in marked contrast to much of contemporary magical literature, which often promises empowerment, self-actualization, and manifestation without true sacrifice or ordeal. The Book of Abramelin is an affront to the ego, a gauntlet thrown down before the would-be adept. And so we come to the final, inescapable question: who, if anyone, should attempt the operation of Abramelin? Not the curious, not the proud, not those seeking shortcuts or wishing to bend the world to their will. Only the humble, only the broken-hearted, only those prepared to surrender everything: reputation, comfort, even sanity, in pursuit of the divine spark within. For those who are so called, may your angel guide you, may your demons bow, and may your will become, at last, clean fire. Thank you for your attention.